They say that a picture can speak 1,000 words. Yeah, it's one I've heard before, but that's because it's true. A single picture can capture a whole world of emotion, thought, disaster, or history. A picture alone can almost tell you all you need to know about a certain topic, and that is why I find this iceberg quite fascinating, and thought it would be a good idea for a video. It was also recommended by some people in the comments of my videos, so I knew it was one you all wanted to see. This iceberg was entirely made by the umbrella cord guy on Reddit, whom have also made the Disturbing Sounds iceberg. Generally, this man can make some great icebergs, so I would recommend looking into his stuff. Now, not only did he make the iceberg, he also linked an explanation to each and every single entry, which not only makes sure that I can understand all of them, but also know what they are. This made the production of the video way easier, and I want to thank him twice for that. Thank you, thank you. He did make some entries not safe for life or not safe for work. There's no difference, but still. So I'm gonna blur them out for the first 5 seconds or so you can skip them if you don't want to watch them. That is, if I can even show them in the first place. Apparently whistling is even too much for YouTube. Very scary indeed. Whistles. Now, there are some 207 entries on this list, which is over twice the amount of a usual iceberg. So that means I'll have to select a few instead of the entire batch, so this video actually becomes watchable and not 6 hours long. And hey, who knows, maybe one day in the future I'll do a part 2, if you want that, of course. Comment that if you want. Anyways, without further ado, let's jump down Grandma's picture book of interesting and fascinating pictures. The first and maybe most well-known picture is Bliss. This picture is a classic background for old Windows computers, some of us even remembering them from the library. You can actually visit this hill in California, except it's no longer the same, and now it grows grapes for wine. The blue marble is an image of Earth taken back in 1972 by the Apollo 17 crew. It is one of the most shared pictures ever in human history, as this picture shows Earth perfectly lit and perfectly round in its beautiful colors. And apparently, the idea behind this picture was made by Stuart Brand during an LSD trip, because apparently you need LSD to come up with the idea to take a picture of Earth. Don't know the logic behind that, but it's there. Earthrise, which is a picture of an actual Earthrise, is again a picture of Earth, but this time taken from the surface of the moon by the Apollo 8 crew. Apparently, this photo wasn't even meant to be taken at all, but one of the crew members just couldn't stop himself from taking this beautiful picture, and then it was born. This is quite an interesting picture, as it shows Earth as what it actually is, just another rock in space. The pale blue dot is another picture taken of Earth, because apparently that was a very hot topic back in 19 buttfuck. But can you see it? Where is Earth? It's right there. The tiny pale blue dot. The rest is something else, but that's Earth. That's you. You are that small. We all are, really. While Earthrise gave us a feeling of being just another rock in space, pale blue dot gives us a feeling of being just that small. It was taken 6 billion kilometers away by the Voyager 1 space probe. Oh, that became topical, didn't it? This picture, which is called Afghan Girl from 1984, shows a lot of things. During 1984, the Soviet Union was well on its way into Afghanistan, trying to occupy the country and form a Soviet Socialist Republic. The war was, of course, brutal, and this picture reminds us that a lot of children were also a part of it. And even though this picture was popular back in the 80s, it also became more popular back in 2001, when W. George Bush began an invasion of the country. The picture not only again showed the feeling that children also saw the brutal terrors of war, but also the fact that women's right was one of George Bush's reasons to invade the country, along with many other kinds of rights, which are now gone. politics. America. The raising of the flag on Iwo Jima was one of the final acts of the Battle of Iwo Jima during the Second World War. The Battle of Iwo Jima was a part of the US island hopping campaign to try and take back as many islands as possible and finally strike Japan on the home islands. This photo though was huge propaganda potential, as this was the first time a US flag was raised on Japanese soil. It's a picture which shines with bravery, honor, and patriotism. Staying on the topic of the Second World War, Into the Jaws of Death is one of the more well-known pictures from the war. It was taken on June 6, 1944, better known as D-Day, when American, British, and Canadian forces, along with the help from the other allies, invaded Nazi-occupied Europe for the first time in years. Well, successfully at least. And also Italy, but this one was special because now the Western Front was open for Allied invasion. While you can't see from this angle and this side, that beach was indeed filled with bunkers, mines, machine guns, and many other things the Germans used to kill as many Americans as possible. And since this was Omaha, a lot of those men didn't make it, even out the water. Ah, the working man. Lunch atop a skyscraper is one of the more well-known pictures of construction. Not that there are many well-known pictures of construction, but still. These 11 workers were working on the Rockefeller Center in Manhattan, New York City, which still stands tall today. This picture really shows the spirit of New York City, and I guess kind of also the United States. A whole city of tall buildings and skyscrapers built by the common man. Abbey Road is the front cover of the Beatles album called, again, Abbey Road. The photo is a simple yet generic photo of the 4 members walking over a crossroad on Abbey Road. I mean, it's a cool photo, but it's simply a cover from an album. Well known, yet it's just that, an album. This simple picture of an egg, which is called the Instagram egg, is the most liked photo on Instagram. Now you might be thinking, what the fuck, but there's a story behind this. This photo was taken by @WorldRecordEgg, which wanted to make a world record having the most liked photo on Instagram. And I guess you could say that mission was accomplished, as it's not only the most liked post on Instagram, but any media platform in history. Not only did it beat a record, it was also intended of raising awareness of mental health issues. I fucking love memes. So during the presidential inauguration of 2021, when Joe Biden became the new president of the United States of America, Bernie Sanders, a popular left-leaning politician, showed up with mittens because it was very cold in January. And for some reason, Bernie Sanders had some kind of meme energy, as it instantly became a meme. I mean, you had an entire inauguration that the guy with mittens on the side was more popular. Kinda weird. Guerrillero Heroico, which means heroic guerrilla fighter in English, is an iconic photo of the revolutionary Marxist Che Guevara. Guevara tried to spread the communist revolution all throughout Latin America and had some successes here and there. He was of course a guerrilla fighter and is now a symbol, along with his image, of communist and anti-establishment revolutions and uprisings. While this is the original image, the stylized version is also used a lot. During the medal ceremony in the Olympic Games in Mexico City in 1968, 2 athletes called Tommy Smith and John Carlos each raised a black gloved fist during the playing of the US national anthem. While at the podium, Smith and Carlos, who had won gold and bronze medals respectively, turned to face the US flag and kept their heads raised until the anthem had finished. Along with that, all 3 medalists also wore human rights badges. Even though this black fist had become a symbol of black power, it was actually intended to be a symbol of just plain old human rights instead. The Brown Lady of Raynham Hall is a ghost story from Norfolk, England, which this picture shows. In this picture, we see a ghost walking down the stairs in Raynham Hall. Supposedly, You can actually see this ghost in Random Hall if you go there yourself, but it's just a ghost story. The many pictures on the golden record on the Voyager 1 and 2 spacecrafts are images used to show the human race, the planet, and our culture. As said before, the Voyager 1 and 2 spacecrafts has been thrown the fuck out in space to get more information about the very place. They both have these golden records, so if it ever runs into aliens that are intelligent enough to understand this, they will get the right information to know what Earth is, where it is, and that we live here. It basically shows the human race as it is, and it's very cool actually. If these records ever land in alien hands, these will be the first pictures they'll ever see of this human race. Dewey defeats Truman was an incorrect banner headline on the front page of the Chicago Daily Tribune on November 3rd, 1948, the day right after Truman defeated Dewey. And as this photo shows, Truman had a good old time with that little mistake. This was during the 1948 presidential election, where then-sitting President Harry S. Truman indeed defeated Governor Thomas E. Dewey. This Swedish picture, which is called The Woman with the Handbag, shows a woman beating a neo-Nazi skinhead with her handbag. And even though this picture gives the feeling that Europe has towards the neo-Nazis in the time and still to this very day, there is some important things to note about this very picture. Before you Antifa guys get happy about this anti-fascist was indeed insane. Even though she was Jewish, this public appearance wasn't because of bravery or anything, but more because she was not mentally sane. She has actually shown regret for this picture and isn't too proud of it, despite the fame it has gotten. Alexa, play the Soviet anthem. The raising of the Soviet flag is probably one of the most patriotic photos a Russian would ever show you. It symbolizes Russian patriotism, the end of fascism in Europe, and of course the end of the Second World War in Europe. The Reichstag was the political center of Nazi Germany, and now that a Soviet banner was flying atop of it, everyone knew the war was over for good. The photograph of Mariana Ginesta is one of the most famous pictures from the Spanish Civil War, being taken back in 1936 during the military uprising. Ginesta herself is actually French and had immigrated to Spain and was only around 17 years old around the time the photo was taken. This picture became a symbol of the Spanish left during the war and is still a huge anti-fascist symbol to this very day. The Boulevard du Temple photograph of 1838 or 1839, we're not really sure, is one of the earliest daguerreotype plates produced by Louis Daguerre. Even though this image seems to be of a deserted street, it is widely considered to be the first photograph to ever include the image of a human. Now don't ask how that makes sense, it just does. Wikipedia said that actually, so that's why I put it in. But there is actually a human in this picture. He's right there. Look at him doing French 1830s stuff, like kicking a thing. So cultural. Monolith, the half-face of Dome, Yosemite National Park in California, is a national mountain in California in Yosemite National Park, of course. Despite just being the picture of a rock, it actually holds a lot of meaning. Not only is it the first picture it ever took based on feelings, but it also has a visual aid for the environmental movement. The Kent State shooting was a shooting on May 4th, 1970, done by the National Guard of Ohio in Kent County, near the university. These students were protesting against the expansion of the Vietnam War into Cambodia, which many people disliked. After a small struggle between the protesters and the National Guard, they opened fire, killed 4 and injured 9. The Hubble Deep Field, or just HDF, is a collection of minor regions in outer space, mostly in a constellation called Ursa Major, captured and observed by the Hubble Space Telescope. This photograph shows the beauty of space because it almost shows no stars for the Milky Way and shows the many galaxies of our universe. There is actually about 3,000 objects on this very image. Try and count them, I dare you. So I don't know why, but there's a bunch of memes on here. I don't know the reason, but here's more memes. So we can trace back this photo to 2009 during the Basketball Hall of Fame introduction ceremony where Jordan held a speech. A single photograph of him crying was taken, yet it only became a meme in 2014 when an edited single version like this was made, and thus a meme was born. Oh yeah, tragic and real. So this incident happened in 2009 in the Netherlands when two engineers were stuck on a windmill which they were working on, which also caught fire. And as we all know, in a windmill there is only one way down. Yet the stairs was on fire and they were now trapped on top of the windmill. And of course, these men knew they were facing death. Either burn up in the turbine or jump down to a death. Eventually, the fire got closer and one slipped and fell down the turbine while the other was recovered in the wreckage. This art installation, which is called Immersion and also Piss Christ, is an actual art piece made by Andreas Serrano, which depicts a crucifix submerged in a small glass tank of the artist's own piss. This went in very different directions. On one side, it actually got a reward in visual arts, and on the other, it was called blasphemous and controversial, to say the least. The art piece is supposed to show how the crucifixion actually was, in the way that not only did Christ spill blood when he was crucified, he of course also shat and pissed his pants, because that's what happens when you die. It's supposed to show what actually happened during the crucifixion of Christ. The day the earth smiled, a thing it never does because it's hell on here. This photo was taken by NASA during the Cassini, see I fixed it, mission in 2013. During an eclipse of the sun, the spacecraft turned to take an image of Saturn and most of its visible rings, as well as Earth and the Moon as a distant pale dots. Probably some of these, if I'm correct. The Loch Ness Monster, or just Nessie if you're cool, is probably one of the most famous folklore characters ever, if not including Bigfoot. And of course, finding him is a rather hard task, as it might not exist, but there is still this famous photo of him, which is called the Surgeon's photograph, which is now known to be a hoax, which only increased my theory that he's not real. So yeah, screw you. The assassination of Lee Harvey Oswald by Jack Ruby was captured both live on tape and on this famous picture. On November 24th, Lee Harvey Oswald was going to be escorted from his prison to court when Jack Ruby came and killed him before he had the chance. This assassination was in revenge of Lee Harvey Oswald's assassination of JFK and also police officer J.D. Tippit. Even though we can agree that Lee Harvey Oswald was a terrible guy, assassinating an assassin doesn't make you any better, and he was sentenced to death in Dallas, Texas. This photo also shows raw, pure emotion, both from Lee Harvey Oswald, the guy escorting him, and the reporter who gives absolutely zero fucks. St. Paul Survives is a photograph taken in London during the night raid of the 29th to 30th December in 1940 during the Blitz of London. While the surrounding area is filled with smoke, fire and ruins, St. Paul's Cathedral stands strong and tall. It symbolizes that even though Britain was surrounded by death and horror, it would always stand tall and win through in the end. The Auschwitz album is a photographical record of the Holocaust during the Second World War, where there was many pictures taken during the Holocaust. probably the most famous picture is this one, showing Hungarian Jews being sent off the trains at the arrival of Auschwitz, even being seen in the background. It gives a horrific kind of feeling, seeing that building in the background along with all the people who are going to die in it or send them to their death. The execution of Vietnamese name is another gruesome picture from the Vietnam War. Basically, the guy being captured is a North Vietnamese captain who was captured by a South Vietnamese brigadier general and is being executed right there in the streets in Saigon, South Vietnam. Even though this brutal scene is between two Vietnamese boys, it's actually photographed by an American. There is also a video version somewhere out there, which I'm not gonna show because that's not suitable for YouTube, but you can find it if you take off 2 seconds and search for it. The Valley of the Shadows of Death is a photo taken in Crimea during the Crimean War. Even though it might look like an empty picture, and especially a weird choice for the most well-known image of the war, this place actually holds a bit more importance than you would first think. First off, this valley is filled with cannonballs because of the constant shelling. It is also here that many soldiers died, especially from Great Britain. This photo was also taken by an Englishman called Roger Fenton, who wanted to show the horrors of war through photographs. The Lullyby conferences is a long line of conferences back from 1911 to today, where people try and find answers to the problems in both physics and chemistry. In this conference picture from 1927, we see some of the most smartest men from the time and even from all of time. They were gathered to try and find the answers for the questions about our world and how it functions. All of these men are known for doing something great in the world of science, like Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, Erwin Schrödinger, and, well, literally everyone on board. The elephant's foot is a nickname given to a large mass of corium and other materials formed underneath the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Chernobyl, Ukraine. To be more exact, it's located right under reactor number 4, where it remains to this very day, being one of, if not the, most radioactive objects in all of human history. That is also man-made, of course. Although extremely dangerous at the time, its radioactive power has decreased over time because of the decay of the radioactive material. War. War never changes. Well, it does, but it sounds more poetic if I say it like this. The shell-shocked soldier, say that 5 times fast, is a picture of a soldier during the First World War who was experiencing shell shock. By modern non-British 1910 slang, that would just be PTSD. The First World War was most likely one of the most brutal for the average soldier, having gas attacks, suicide shots, trenches, machine guns, all in one giant cluster of death. Going through literal hell for 4 years can make you crazy, as this fine gentleman seems to have been. The Omagh bombing was a car bombing in 1998 in the town of Omagh in County Tyrone in Northern Ireland. It was made out by the real IRA, which is a kind of different group from the IRA. The real IRA was against the IRA's ceasefire on the Good Friday Agreement. This picture was taken literal seconds before the car right there exploded, killing 29 people and injuring 220 more. In the wreckage, a camera was found which showed this very photo. The 2 people, that being the father and the child, did survive the bombing, but 29 others, again, didn't. Blanche Mounier, often known in French as La Séquestre de Poitiers, which can be translated to the confined woman of Poitiers, was a woman from Poitiers, Vienne, France, who was secretly kept locked in her small room by her mother for 25 years. Eventually, she was found by police in a state which they called middle-aged, immaculate, and filthy. According to officials, Monier had not seen any sunlight for her entire captivity. She changed from this to this after 25 years of being trapped in a room. Combat is a Russian black and white photograph of a Soviet military officer armed with a pistol rallying his men for an attack against the Germans in 1942. This photograph does also hold some kind of mystery. Even though we know when and kind of where it was taken, who this guy is not 100% known. Some say it's Junior Officer Alexei Yeremenko. Yet again, we don't entirely know. But if it was Alexei, then this would have been the very last thing we saw of him, as he died that same day. This is, again, another patriotic Soviet picture, being both used in Russia and also the Ukraine. Oh, cool background. This picture shows a bitterroot forest fire in Montana raging on in the background while two mountain elks hide or rather protect themselves from this fire in the middle of a river. Even though it is 100% badass, it has also been featured by NASA and Time magazine because how it shows nature and Earth as a whole. The Solway Firth Spaceman is a picture taken by Jim Templeton of a daughter with a weird spaceman in the background. Except when he took the photo, no one else but him and his daughter was in the field. Ooh, scary. And also dumb. Even though some claim there were only 2 people in that field, there were actually 3. Jim, his daughter, and his wife. Jim's wife is also most likely who this spaceman actually is, as no other explanation makes goddamn sense. Some say it's the ghost of a spaceman who was killed in space. Yet that makes no fucking sense. Why would he be on Earth? Why would he have the spacesuit on? Shut up. I hate this. While this might just look like a picture of a baby, this baby holds more than just spit and snot on its mouth. No, this is a part of history. This is the first ever picture that has been scanned and saved on a computer back in 1957. A team led by Russell A. Kurz took a photo of his own infant son, used their own new and improved version of a wire photo drum, and scanned this photo into the computer. And now that baby is in his 60s, at best. Yes, fountain. Welcome back to art class, guys. This picture is the closest we can actually get to the very famous artwork made by Marcel Duchamp in 1970. This is an avant-garde artwork which simply shows a urinal that's been placed down with the initials R. Mutt 1970 on the side. As you would expect, this artwork was pretty heavily looked down upon, as it's simply almost not even art. Some even calling it anti-art, but it still had a heavy message. R. Mutt on the side stands for Richard Mutt, Richard being a slang for moneybags in French, and Mutt, which is spelled with an O, is for Mutt Works, which is something about labor and money, he says. This is also why some call it anti-art, as the message is so deeply hidden down and the art in itself is so unoriginal and almost boring to some. So if you don't even try to understand it and just see it on the side of the road, you wouldn't think, oh, that's art. You would think, oh, that's a urinal on the side of the road. Frame 303 shows a 330th frame of the Splatoon film, which shows JFK's assassination in Dallas, Texas. In this one frame, you can even see the bullet which killed John F. Kennedy ricocheting out the vehicle. Splatoon, the man who of course filmed this incident, insisted on keeping 303 out of the film. John Quincy Adams was known for buying Florida. Big mistake, honestly. It's one of the first presidents to have a picture taken of him. I mean, I guess it's a jump in technology and the start of a tradition, but it's just a picture of Adams, who you don't know anything about, because it's fucking Adams. But still, I guess it is an important picture. for the Americans, I guess. It could have been a French president or a British monarch, but no, it's John Adams. In a sense, Dancing Man is Australia's version of VJ Day in Times Square. Instead of seeing a sailor or a soldier kissing a girl on the mouth in Times Square, it's a guy just dancing about in the middle of the road. It's a very important picture in Australian history and culture, as it shows the joyous feeling Australia had at the end of the war. Oh no, Mr. Dwyer, put the gun down, no! So for those that don't know, Robert Budd Dwyer was a Pennsylvanian politician who committed suicide while being filmed. Pictures and video was taken of the event, and Dwyer killed himself right then and there. You can actually find the video on YouTube, the pictures on Google, and even at one point you would actually find the video on YouTube Kids, because who needs management? It's gone now, but the sheer fact that was even there in the first place is astonishing. Thanks YouTube, always doing your best, huh? Wait for Me Daddy is a photo taken on October 1st, 1940, showing a British Columbian regiment marching down New Westminster in British Columbia. In this photo, Warren Whitey Burnett ran away from his mother to his father, Private Jack Burnett. After taking this picture, the Canadians thought, oh shit, that good, and used it in almost everything ever since. Oh my, I do say, looks like chaos. So this picture, looking down Sacramento Street in San Francisco, shows people looking down Sacramento Street, San Francisco, during the earthquake of 1906 in San Francisco. What do you see there? That giant puff of smoke? Yeah, that's a giant fire that's going to swallow everything and kill a few people. Oh my. So the Tunguska event was a giant 12 megaton explosion that occurred in buttfuck nowhere, Siberia, Russia. It is said to have come from a giant asteroid capable of killing an entire metropolitan area, or in other words, something like this. If that meteor had hit, let's just say, Sweden in 1908, it would have killed way many more people. What we see in this picture is the aftermath. That being trees knocked over for miles and miles. So what we see here is the Black Hills, more specifically, this one being Mount Rushmore. Just without the carving and all the faces. It's almost kinda cursed in a way. I mean, it's like, give me back your precedence. Gone. You can kinda see the outline and shape of Mount Rushmore in there, but it's just a bunch of rocks, really. Robert Cornelius was an American photographer and pioneer in the history of photography. He did a bunch of things in his life, mostly photography, and this is probably his magnum opus. The first ever selfie ever taken. But in a way, it almost gives me deja vu. It's the same as all the other historical pictures. It's a very shitty picture which looks like, well, just bad, but it's a start of something great, which it was. I mean, 2014 wouldn't even have happened without this guy. Goebbels didn't like that. This photo, dubbed Eyes of Hatred, shows the German propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels eyeing down a photographer minutes after realizing that he was Jewish. Mere moments ago, Goebbels happily took pictures with the guy, but when he realized he was a Jew, everything changed. This also kind of shows the mindset of Germany during that period. The Jews were the ultimate enemy, and they hid among the masses like wolf among sheep. Ah, look, this guy again. Vladimir Komarov was the Soviet cosmonaut who died a special death, as can be seen right here. That is him. That crispy little thing? Yeah, that's Komarov. Because space travel at that time was so shitty, the space rocket Komarov was sent into was basically a death trap, as he began to crash down into Earth instead of descend into Earth. In his last few moments, he curses the high officials of the Soviet Union who put him there in the first place, as it of course killed him horribly. He was burnt to crisps and crashed down in Orenburg, Russia. In the modern era, aerial shots isn't that uncommon. I mean, just use YouTube or Google Maps, you moron. But back in the 1860s, this was a daredevil stunt. Taking a picture from the high skies was, well, very dangerous. But when photograph was first invented, this was the first thing that popped into people's mind. How amazing wouldn't that look? This eventually led James Wallace Black in 1860 to jump into a hot air balloon called Queen of the Air and fly high above Boston City and take this very photo. The first ever aerial photo. So some of you might get deja vu, as this is basically the Hubble Deep Field except extra, basically. Or actually, ultra. It is the Hubble Ultra Deep Field, showing up to 10,000 galaxies in one beautiful picture. So colorful, so mysterious, showing endless amount of planets, stars, and maybe even life, if we're lucky. It really shows the beauty of space in so many ways, its endlessness and beauty. David by Michelangelo is one of the most well-known and most beautiful masterpieces ever made in human history. If you ever had any kind of art class, you've probably heard about this guy once or twice. Yet we all know him in this location in Florence, Italy. Yet, he has also been placed right here as seen in this picture. While today, he's in a famous museum in Florence, in this picture, and in old days, he was actually just on the streets of Florence. They have also censored him with a leaf, as some find the penis disturbing to look at. Speaking of David by Michelangelo, here he is as well, but in the 1940s during World War II. As the Allies moved more and more up the boot of Italy, bombings of course became a normal thing of the day. Yet the Italians also hid amongst many famous sites, like for example Monte Cassino, which got totally obliterated by Allied bombings. This also went for the art city of Florence, which slowly feared that the British and American bombs slowly moving towards the city would destroy art pieces like for example David. They therefore built a dome around it to protect it, and it worked, as it's still around to this very day. You've seen blue marble, you've seen Earthrise, yet get ready for Explorer 6. Oh yes, this is a picture of Earth, actually the very first image of Earth in orbit. What we see here is a blurry image, of course, yet the white thing here is the Central Pacific being lit by sunshine, and this whole dark area is the rest of the world in darkness, which can't be seen. Actually, nothing can be seen, it's blurry and shitty. This is indeed the first photo ever taken of lightning back in 1880 something, which was taken some time to take. I mean, the equipment, the timing, the dedication even. My god, this man is dedicated. This photo was taken by William Jennings almost as a kind of dare, as he wanted to prove that lightning wasn't just zigzags in the sky, but had more complicated and more death-like shapes. And he was about to prove them wrong. And prove them wrong, he did, as this photo shows the very lightning-shaped shape we all know today as actual lightning. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've just realized this is a very historic iceberg. This is another historic photo, this being the first ever solar eclipse captured back in 1851. And of course, we all know what a solar eclipse is. It's when the moon passes over the sky, over the sun, and blocks it from shining on the earth. And of course, today, it's an event we've all maybe experienced once or twice in our life. Maybe we have one of those black things you can look through and actually see the eclipse head on. But back then, in 1851, it was rather strange. There is paintings of the time where people just stood in the streets, waiting and observing this event. But of course, also capturing it was a rather hard task, as the equipment back then was, of course, lacking compared to today, so actually filming it, setting it up, and the timing was a challenge to say the least. But they captured this, so it looks like the mission was accomplished. Now, when you first see this photo, you might think the same as me, which is, what? And that is a rather fair question, but apparently this is one of the most famous photographs ever made and a benchmark of modernism in the history of the photograph. Yet, what is this? This is actually a tortoise shell standing on its end against a dark background. Just like Fountain, this photo has a lot of artist talk behind it. It was inspired by pictures of seashells, which had a almost magic-like effect on the photographer Edward Weston. This photograph as well has also been described as being greater than life and giving intense emotions and showing beauty in many ways. This is where I differ from a normal artist, as I don't get it. And I guess that's where people split when it comes to art. Either you can see its deep complex meaning, or you say that's a simple shell right there. What are you talking about? This old picture of Machu Picchu is the very first picture taken of the city, taken the same time it was rediscovered back in 1911. It was even taken by the same guy who found it, who was Hiram Bingham. The city is old, pre-Columbian, mysterious, and quite fascinating. While we do know that 750 people could live there at one time, there was only found 173 skeletons. That is a story for another time, as that's not really important. This picture shows a doorway into this very mystery. It almost rocked the world that a city like this actually existed. And National Geographic took an entire month of their time to really talk about this very city. This is Willie. Say hello. Say hello. I know what you're thinking, it's another one of those historic photos, and yes, it is. This is the very first smile captured on picture, and yes, that is how much you smile in Britain. Like, you cannot physically smile more than that. And yeah, that was that was it. That was all. A smile. Intérieur d'un cabinet de curiosité. Yes, I do speak French, or roughly talk French as I see it, is a still life in a daguerreau style photograph. This photograph was taken back in 1837 as a kind of mysterious still life photograph in a way of trying to make photography into more of an art. And of course, usually when you make a still life, you actually set up the still life and then you paint it. But who needs that? You can just take a photo. Boom jams. An entire hour of work in a single second. Mind blowing. Yet less impressive, but still. The Great Picture, huh? That's a bit of a grand title, isn't it? That would also mean it's a great picture, huh? Oh, is that? A ship in black and white? Oh, okay. Okay, so while the containment of this picture might not be the greatest, it is great in another way, as it is the biggest picture ever printed, having its own world record. And even though that is a great achievement, and you can see the people for scale, there is bigger paintings out there, painted. So, I mean, and yeah, I know, picture and painting, different things, but the title of the Great Picture held a bit more wassage than the picture itself. Okay, just between you and me, you've stayed here for like 40 minutes, you're actually interested now. So how about we go on a not safe for life run? This part of the Iceberg has a bunch of not safe for life pictures, but I'm supposed to take, you know, a bit of each and just randomly select some, but how about we take all the not safe for life ones in one big run and see what happens? Being demonetized is what's gonna happen, but it's still gonna be fun, isn't it? Okay, so the first of these not safe for life pictures isn't the most not safe for life, but it still is a dying man. The falling soldier, also called the loyalist militiaman of the moment of death, is a picture of a dying man mid-battle in 1936 during the Spanish Civil War. Who this man is claimed to be Federico Borel Garcia, who was an anarchist militiaman during the war fighting for Republicans. This is yet another picture of the Spanish Civil War with anti-fascist feeling, often being included with the title "Freedom Isn't Free." Okay, now we're talking not safe for life. This picture shows a mummified captain off the coast of the Philippines. Now, at first you might think, oh, that must have been there for like years, but according to scientists, he's only been there for a week. According to the autopsy, this man died of a heart attack while being trapped on a boat. As the police began to investigate the area, more and more was discovered about this man and his background before he died. Tampering with the food, a letter to his wife, trying to use the radio with no luck. There's a whole story about this man and his death. Yeah, you see that? That might be a corpse of that girl in Ukraine. This picture tells a story of the Odessa catacombs in Ukraine. And of course, just like the famous catacombs in Paris, these catacombs were easy to get lost in. This story is about a girl called Masha who we see here. She was a schoolgirl who went out drinking with her friends during New Year's Eve, having a good old time. After a bit of drinking, they decided to go down the catacombs for a walk. However, only her friends walked out, leaving Masha alone in the catacombs, either on purpose or by accident. They were drunk, so it could be either. She never came out those catacombs. Afterwards, these young men, who were apparently her classmates, went down looking for her some time after. They eventually found this, which they think to be Masha, who died of dehydration in the catacombs. Whenever you talk about catacombs, whether that be Odessa or Paris, it always ends the same, doesn't it? Some sad individual dying in the most inhumane way possible. Alone in the pitch black dark, either of starvation, thirst, or as it seems here, fallen and just bled out all alone deep down the ground. Oh my, that's quite gruesome, isn't it? I mean, it is a quite gruesome list, but this is top notch. I mean, Jesus Christ. I guess there is YouTube rules. I mean, they don't rule, but there is a rule, so I can't show it. Sorry. Look at this background instead. Fun, huh? This woman right here, or well, half of her, has been nicknamed the Black Dahlia. Shortly after she moved to California, she was found dead, limbless, and her body chopped in pieces in Los Angeles, California. And to this day, we don't know who did it. She just kind of became that, and we don't know why. So, one of the biggest mysteries in California history. And that is a strange place, we all know it. Well, I guess I can show this, just don't think of it as a dying, decaying body. Just think of it as modern art. Think of it as strange colliding colors, giving more feeling to this strange world we live in. Yeah, that'll work. This image is of two Japanese guys who was exposed to a bit too much radioactive material in accidents in Japanese nuclear power plants. Apparently, Japan doesn't have that much of a good history with safety culture in nuclear power plants, which is just a recipe for disaster, isn't it? It has been so bad that 2 people have died because of non-safety measures, and over 600 has been exposed to nuclear material. Basically what happens when you get exposed to too much nuclear material, like these 2 fellas, is that the DNA begins to flat out fail and your body begins to mutilate and become rotten and dying, like this guy. So I guess I did kind of expect this to happen, but when you make a not safe for life rotten, there is gonna be a lot of blank space on here. I mean, he's just dead. I mean, there is nothing left of him. Whoa, the Byford dolphin accident is one of the most gruesome recorded deaths ever. It all took place beneath the Byford dolphin oil rig, which was slowly being built. For this to actually happen, divers had to dive deep down to the ocean to actually build something. And to cut a long story short, pressure is a bitch. These divers are placed deep beneath the ocean in chambers, which have to be dealt with accordingly. Basically, if you don't close the hatch the right way, then the entire chamber will be pressured way too hard, people have flash boils, and as it seems, they can die in the most gruesome way possible. Basically, the pressure was so immense that the man just fucking exploded. Limbs for 10 meters all over the place. One died in the most gruesome way possible, and 4 was almost fatally wounded in this accident. So this, as the name would probably hint at, is a different kind of not safe for work. It's not a dead body, nor is it a dying body. It is a changed body, a hermaphrodite, a person with both a penis and a vagina in one. Of course, I can't show that because that's literally, you know, the go-to censored stuff. But I can literally see everything. You can't see it, but I can see ass, dick, vagina, all in one. Why am I looking at this? Has my life gone to the point where I'll speak to a microphone and look at just that? Now, some might ask themselves, why would that be on here? Is it important? Well, kind of. It shows the early history of intersex people and sex changes. Kids, do you like torture, mutilation, rape, sexual assault, and just anything bad and physically harming? Well, of course you don't. But if you were Albert Fish, those would have all been hobbies. Albert Fish was a child rapist, serial killer, and just overall bad guy who would torture and kill people for fun, and also eat them. After he molested children, almost all being under 6 years old, and torturing a guy to death and collecting his penis, his sanity only began to decline even more. Before this point, his intelligence was apparently damaged from a young age, meaning he was incredibly stupid. But now, there was no questioning his sanity. He was so hungry for torture and pain that he began to do it on himself, not being able to wait to do it on someone else. And that is what you can see right here. That is Albert Fish's pelvis with up to 29 needles inside of it. Albert just had to hurt something. Okay, so the last picture of this not safe for life run goes to Ruth Snyder. You are dying. This photo became semi-well known after its publishing in the New York Daily News. The picture shows Ruth Snyder, a murderer in New York City who is being executed because of her crimes. And yes, this is mid-execution. The picture is taken as she is dying by electric shock. The Battle of Kiev in 1941 was a giant disaster for the Soviet Union, losing up to 700,000 Soviets in one giant swoop. The Germans surrounded and crushed Kiev. This picture was taken only moments after Stalin had realized that Kiev had fallen for good. This was a giant disaster, not only for the Russian people, but especially Stalin, who mere months earlier tried to make friendship with the Germans, who've now surrounded and trapped 700,000 of his own countrymen. This photo is also unauthorized and was supposed to be burned because it shows Stalin in a bad light. However, the photo was kept a secret until Stalin died, whereafter the photo could be shown for real. Now see, that is how he won the presidency. There isn't that much to say really, it's just a beautiful picture of Donald Trump before it's any kind of political big shot, surrounded by well-known characters like Shrek and Frankenstein, all in suits. Let's just sit back and admire this photo actually being a real thing. And I'm bored now. This picture shows the horror and terror of 9/11, as almost any picture of this event does. In this picture, we see Edna Sinton waving from a hole in the World Trade Center where she used to work at. She can hardly even be seen by the huge hole, yet she is down there at the bottom waving for some help. While most of her co-workers died instantly in the hit, she survived and tries to get out with some help, yet that help would never come. Edna didn't survive 9/11, yet how she died is not well known. There is a picture showing someone falling from the World Trade Center, which some might think is Edna, yet that isn't entirely proven. She could have fallen or realized there was no help and just ended it right there, yet she could also have burned up in the wreckage. We don't really know. The human shadow etched in stone, or just the Hiroshima shadows, is a phenomenon that happened when Hiroshima got nuked by the Americans in the end of the Second World War. The most well-known picture and best example of these shadows is this black spot on a stairwell in a bank in Hiroshima. When the bomb blew atop Hiroshima, someone was sitting on this very place at the stairwell in Hiroshima, leaving this spot as he was, well, obliterated. This is his last residue. These Hiroshima shadows therefore shows what was there when the bomb blew. Fun fact, most of these old important photos come from the Wikipedia page called History of Photography, and this is another one. This is apparently the oldest photographic portrait ever known, being taken back in 1839 or 1840, and yeah, that's it. This picture from 1844, dubbed The Haystack, is apparently one of the most important pictures ever. I don't know what makes a picture important, but apparently this one is one of them, the important ones. This picture is apparently a very poetic one, a very artistic one, showing the beauty of nature, its draftsmanship, the pride of the harvest, and a continuation of tradition. While the message is true and the picture is beautiful, I still wouldn't say it's the most important picture ever, or even one of them, but it's a good picture. Now this guy is funny. It might sound strange, but this is the first photographic showing of the middle finger as a way of saying you don't like somebody. This photograph first appeared in 1886 when old Horace Rodman, a baseball pitcher for the Boston Benedicts, was photographed giving it to a member of the rival team, the New York Giants. Yeah, fuck you, New York. This gesture was apparently very popular with the Italians in America, as it was them who brought it to the continent. Yuri Krivonishenko's final photo doesn't show that much in itself, actually. Yet, it holds a huge backstory, as this is the last photo taken during the hike that ended in the Dyatlov Pass incident. The Dyatlov Pass incident is one you probably know, being that 9 hikers went missing in Siberia, Russia, near the Urals, where they all died in mysterious ways, having many strange features which still to this day is unknown. This photo was found on the camera of one of the hikers, yet what it actually shows is unknown. We can see some kind of light, very blurry, and a dark background, yet that is all we can get of it. As mysterious as Dyatlov itself. After the assassination of JFK, scientists made an autopsy of JFK's body to try and find out how the bullets hit him and from which angle and how much damage it did. These photos was taken as a visual demonstration to the autopsy report. Even though these are supposed to show the demonstration of how JFK died, it also does hold a kind of chilling side. Of course, if bodies is a thing that scares you. And I guess that's what it is, a body. And of course, just like a real dead body, the first time you actually see it, it's scary and horrifying as it looks almost unreal. But when you're used to it and you see it a bit more, it's just that, flesh and bones. I strangely always want to see this picture, and now I have. And somehow it's even more horrifying. If you didn't know, which you do, Jeff the Killer was a famous creepypasta character with a white face, red lips and black hair. And this was a photo that accompanied him. An edited version of this photo. And I think I've seen the creepypasta one a bit too much, as this one now looks scary to me, even though that one is supposed to be scary. Yet this new photo here is also kind of scary. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the unreal features like the very white face and almost not seeable nose, but somehow it's very creepy. While this photo might not show that much, it's indeed the very last photo found on the phone of one of two girls who disappeared in 2014 in Panama while being on a vacation. These two girls were Chris Kremers and Lizana Fran, both coming from Amersfoort, Netherlands. While they stayed at a host family to help children in the area, they went on a walk on the 1st of April through the forest near Baru volcano, where they never actually returned. Somehow, they went off trail and went missing. It took many weeks before we actually found any clues of where they were, and when we found them in pieces. Their death is extremely unusual, as their bones was found almost meatless and bleached. There was no signs of scratching on these bones, meaning that animals most likely didn't eat them. So what happened? We don't know. And this is the last clue, and the biggest clue, on what actually happened. And it gives us nothing. French balloonist, which is apparently a real title to have, professor and inventor Jacques Charles is believed to have captured fleeting negative photographs of silhouettes on light-sensitive paper at the start of the 19th century prior to Wedgwood, who apparently have done it first. Now, this part doesn't actually include a picture, so what you see here is what I can find of it. I don't know what it really is, but apparently it's something. So, you know, this is edited after the voiceover. Yeah. These silhouettes made by Charles is apparently the first time anyone has thought of making a picture permanent. But sadly, Charles died without actually documenting these photographs. Therefore, we don't exactly know what they were. However, one of his students, Francois Arago, apparently heard of these during a lecture and wrote it down. But the details is of course kind of lacking, and therefore not perfect. Carl Wilhelm Scheele is another scientist who tried to invent the photograph with lacking success. He did a bunch of science stuff which I am too dumb to understand, but basically he created something that could, in essence, capture some kind of image, is the theory. His experiments wouldn't result in full-on photos, but they would prove great potential in actually making real photos. There were some minor failures, like for example he couldn't get all colors on a picture and some wouldn't even show up. But that is also a problem in later, more advanced photographs, which is why we have dark rooms, which do show more color and more, well, picture. But in the end, his experiments were forgotten and not really used. Poor Scheele. Back before the 1700s, people generally didn't care for making photos, since why do that? You can just paint them and it'll be like 1,000 times better. They still didn't know that the sun could affect things, like for example, tan your skin or make certain powders dark over time. In 1614, Angelo Sala, a scientist, noted that sunlight will turn powdered silver nitrate black, and that paper wrapped around the silver nitrate for a year will turn black. This is the beginning of light-sensitive materials, which is used to make photographs. So, in an essence, this was the first, I guess, thought of making a photograph. In essence. It's not really, it's more than just realize that you could lighten certain materials with the sunlight, but that's also it. Now this is some weird stuff. The earliest known written record of the camera obscura, or just a camera in itself, is found in the Chinese text called Mosi, dated to the 14th century BCE, traditionally ascribed to and named for Mosi, a Han Chinese philosopher and the founder of the Mohiest school of logic. In these writings, he explains how an image in a collective point, or treasure house as you call it, is inverted by an insecure point, the pinhole, that collects the rays of light. Light comes from the foot of an illuminated person, who are partly hidden below and partly form the top of the image. Rays from the head, who are partly hidden above and partly form the lower part of the image. This is basically a remarkably early correct description of the camera obscura, which would only be seen again in the 11th century. Other people like the Greek philosopher Aristotle and the Greek mathematician Euclid also had thoughts and theories about cameras and photos. The Mosi is still the most impressive though, as it describes a camera some 1,000 years before it actually became a thing. Now, if you think the camera obscura, or just camera as a general thing, was impressive back in ancient China, then oh boy, do I have a surprise for you. Some people have theorized that some kind of camera obscura, or some kind of camera theory, was found back in prehistoric times. Basically, that ancient humans have actually somehow found the camera obscura having a hole in a cave which projectiles light into the cave, giving some kind of image. Some even think that the use of camera obscura was used to prove some kind of god or spirit in a temple worship. Don't get me wrong, it's not like they actually had cameras back in Ooga Booga times, but rather they might accidentally have found a hole in a cave which have made some kind of very weird camera obscura effect, which again might just be a hole, so a bit of a shaky theory, yet it is still very fascinating to think about. And there we are, yet another iceberg finished. Or, well, half of it, because I couldn't do all of it, but again, if you want to see the other half, comment it down below, and say, hey fat ass, make another one, and then I'll do it. Even though I'm not fat, but still, I'll do it. Again, all credits go to the umbilical guy, as that man has really made some real big breakthroughs in the iceberg community. And I mean, hand on heart, I'm actually a fan of that guy, he knows what he's doing. Maybe I could do another one of his icebergs, besides this photograph one. He has a lot of them, so I could just almost pick one and it'll be a good video. But this video is now over. And remember, if you want to watch more of these kind of videos, you can always subscribe to the channel and find more of them on there. And well, that's how to end a video in a good way. You can't do that. Well, you can, just end it.